Welcome to Lazy Reviews. My name is Arvid and I watch a whole lot of movies. In fact, I waste a lot of my life watching terrible films, but there are also some good ones. And that's why I decided to make this channel, so that I can share my experiences with you, so you can avoid the shitty turds I watch, and instead go straight for the gold. Having talked about Puppet Master franchise in my last video, I thought I would go on to talk about quite possibly the most famous, not only puppet horror or doll horror franchise, but also quite possibly the most famous doll in movie history. And that is Child's Play, or the Chucky series. This time I'll be covering 8 movies, not 14 like last time, but that's not to say that I will necessarily go into further details, because unlike the Puppet Master series, most of the Chucky movies are actually quite good, and I don't want to spoil them, which I can't really say about pretty much any movie in the Puppet Master series. To you, those of you who haven't seen my review of that franchise, most of it is terrible, and I still don't understand how it really has a cult following. But enough about that steaming pile of shit. Let's talk about Child's Play. So the first movie came out in 1988, and it's called, Child's Play. Nothing fancy, just Child's Play. And in brief, the movie is about this serial killer, this notorious strangler called Charles Lee Ray. He is gunned down in the toy store, and he apparently knows black magic, so he makes an incantation and transfers his soul to the good guy doll, which is a brand new toy that is marketed across the United States. Everybody wants it. It's everywhere. It's a brand new thing. You know how these things go. So yeah, the toy every kid wants, which kind of doesn't make sense since it's just this doll with red hair or ginger hair, kind of looking lame. It can talk a bit, so yeah. Well, thinking about how Furbies went when I was a kid, everybody wanted a Furby, and what was a Furby? It was this ugly little bird thingy that could kind of sing, kind of talk, pretend to be a friend, but not really. And everybody had a Furby, but why? It's a shitty toy. And it's the same with this Chucky doll. What kind of games? I can understand why maybe it would appeal more to girls, but a small boy wanting this doll? I don't know. Actually, that might be the biggest plot inconsistency with the entire series, as far as I see it. I don't understand why boys want to play with this. Anyway, that was a tangent. Back to the story. So yes, he is transferred into one of these dolls, which is then bought by, no, gifted. It ends up in the possession of a single mom with her son Andy. And because it's a serial killer, the doll proceeds to kill people. And the first movie's sort of run-of-the-mill slasher, kinda in the Halloween style, but more goofy because it's a doll. But this time it's still played quite seriously. It's not fun and games, really. It is an actual horror movie. So yeah, this movie is just more serious. It's more like a proper horror movie. And I think it works as a movie, but compared to in the direction that the movies will go from here, it kind of does stand out as being maybe a bit more dull. That was not intended as a pun. Boring. It will end up being more boring, maybe, in a way. Still works, just not as great as some of the other movies. But yeah, it stalks. So one of the reasons why it wants to get to this kid is because it wants to transfer the soul, his own soul, to Andy, so he can take over Andy's body. And there is something that he can only transfer the first soul to the one who he reveals his name to, or something. I don't know. It's not the magic in this franchise is not really explained that well, and I guess, thankful for it, because it could be even more goofy and stupid if it tried to explain it. So it's fine, just go with it, enjoy it. Yeah, that's pretty much what I can say for that movie. The end scene of the destruction of the doll is also done quite well, quite entertaining, and when you look into some of the things that happen later in the series, it doesn't necessarily make sense how the ending of this movie plays out, but it is nonetheless fine. As a standalone movie, this is fine. You can watch it. Again, why it does feel a bit different than the rest of the films, I'll come into now, because I'll talk about the sequel. Actually, before talking about the sequel, I should mention that the entire Chucky franchise, perhaps is the only franchise out there, has the same screenwriter behind all of them. The directors, the producers, all those change from movie to movie, but Don Mancini is the man behind the story, which on paper should make it more consistent as a franchise. As we will see, unfortunately, it does take some large departures I really hated. Um, but aside from the remake in 2019, Don Mancini has written all of the movies, and he actually almost exclusively worked with the Chucky franchise, the Child's Play franchise, which is also quite an interesting career to have. Yes, interesting, that's the word I'll use. So Child's Play 2, 1990, released 2 years after the first one. Right off the bat, I have to say that how it's a sequel to the first movie is a bit convoluted. Because in the first movie, the Chucky gets destroyed, and he's destroyed in the apartment of Andy. But this movie opens up with the good guy doll factory finding the original parts of this destroyed Chucky doll and building him a new body. This is something that will stay mostly consistent, that as long as there's a part of Chucky's body that remains intact, it will be still possessed by Charles Lee Ray. There are a lot of things that kind of don't add up here, which I will probably talk about when we come to it. But anyway, so they reconstruct the doll, escapes the factory, and decides to hunt down Andy because for whatever reason, the magic, it's still only Andy that can be possessed by him. So he wants to hunt down Andy, who is now... I'm not gonna spoil more. So let's just say that Andy resides still within the city, and it's difficult to really talk about this without spoiling some of the plot from the first one, but I'll try to keep it spoiler free, at least any major spoilers. The good guy doll is a popular toy, so it's found throughout the city. Children want to play with it. And of course, Andy now has a deep-seated fear of it. But this also means that Chucky can use all the fact that there are all these dolls to blend in more than he maybe could in the first movie. Like the first movie, a lot of this plot actually is just about how Andy can convince people that Chucky is real and Chucky is responsible for all the bad things that happen and not him. Which probably goes as well as you can expect. There are some of the more memorable kills in the franchise are from this movie. It's also where it starts becoming more fun. It becomes more of a, not run-of-the-mill slasher, but it takes on more of the slasher tropes. It has one-liners, it has silly kills. It's less of a horror now, and more of a just sit down, enjoy kind of movie. Yeah, a good flick to watch with friends. So this is another film I can recommend. It has also maybe a fairly famous and also quite nice ending scene shot in the factory where these dolls are built. And it's done very well, and some amazing kills. I guess we can talk about that with the doll, but I think now to return to a problem I have with the franchise. Just how alive Chucky's body is, as compared to whether or not it's a doll or a person, is poorly explained, because in this movie, Chucky runs out of time to possess Andy's body. At least that's what a failed ritual in the film tells us. And also we see that Chucky now, if his arm is caught, it starts to bleed and has bone and looks like a human arm. So that means that the longer Chucky stays as a doll, or Charles Lee Ray stays as a doll, the more the doll will become a human. And we saw something similar in the first movie, where the doll bleeds when it's shot. But here is what I don't understand. If that's how it works, how can a Chucky arm be cut off and have a life of its own? Which is something we will see later in the franchise. How can Chucky's head be cut off and live a life of its own, as we will see later in the franchise? How can Chucky lose his head and still be alive, as we saw in the first movie? It's one of those franchises where you really shouldn't be asking questions, and I only started asking these questions when the movie started to bore me or even annoy me. So I would say the first 5 movies, I can already spoil it here, the first 5 movies are good. You can definitely watch all the first 5 movies, they're not equally good. After that, the 2 movies done by Don Massini are terrible. And that's when the entire franchise kind of fell apart for me. Not that I don't enjoy the first 5 movies, but it's just when I started asking so many questions that, in hindsight, the other movies don't really work, which is sad. I mean, I probably should talk about all this in the conclusion, in the wrap up, but I just had to get it off my chest because it's not as bad as the Puppet Master franchise. The Puppet Master franchise was a nightmare to deal with, full of inconsistencies. The plot story constantly changed, anachronisms left and right. It was a terribly, terribly put together series. This is at least more consistent in the first 5 movies. The universe constantly develops, as sequels should do. That's fine, but Chucky, oh my god, Child's Play 7. It the cult of Chucky is such a mess that just does terrible things with the universe. We'll get to that, but let's first go to Child's Play 3. Child's Play 3 from 1991. So Child's Play 3 came out the year later in 1991, and it's a direct sequel to the second film. It opens up with an intro that shows what happened to Chucky after the events of the second movie, and it takes place several years later. Not entirely sure how many, but enough for Andy to now be a teenager, probably around 16. It is revealed that Andy struggled with pretty much every single school he has been attending since the events of the second film. And as a result, he is now sent to army school to, well, get a second chance on life. At least that's what is the purpose of him going there. As it unfolds, it probably makes things worse. As the army school, I have no idea if this is how they function in real life, but this is how they always function in movies. They are governed by sadistic assholes who just love torturing the cadets. And of course, yeah, it seems like all the officers or non-commissioned officers are just assholes who wants to torment the children and the teenagers there. In the meantime, what happened to Chucky is that he's being remelded as the toy company behind the doll decides to relaunch it, hoping to win over some nostalgia from the popularity of the good guy doll. And therefore, not to spoil it, so the remains of Chucky from the previous movie is turned into a new doll. This time, it doesn't even get the chance to be sent out to the toy store, as it kills the owner of the company in his own office and then gets away, shipping itself to Andy, after looking him up and finding out where he now lives. So the rest of the movie is Andy and 2 other misfits at the military academy, or the military school, kind of fighting off the bullies while also discovering that these murders are taking place and have to convince everybody else that the doll is real and that the doll is dangerous. In the meantime, Andy now being too old, Chucky is no longer trying to possess him, only to kill him for revenge, instead trying to possess this new kid at the school, who, for, again, these magical reasons, something about him hearing the name right or something. Yeah, no, it's not really that clear. For that reason, he can now possess the kid, and he's already doing it straight away after he is unpacked by this kid. Because I should say that, yes, it's sent to Andy, but this kid gets the responsibility of bringing the doll to Andy, but instead opens the parcel himself and now wants the doll himself because he really loves this doll. It's like his biggest dream. Because again, I have no idea why, But boys who are around 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in this universe just love a talking doll that looks like a baby, basically. So yes, he wants to open he opens this up and they perform this ritual. It gets interrupted, and the rest of the film, Chucky is trying to get some free space with this kid so he can perform the ritual, while also pursuing Andy to get revenge. And one thing I want to bring up here is that the movie has a very fantastic performance by Andrew Robinson, who is probably best known as playing the father in the first Hellraiser movie. And he's playing this insane hairdresser, insane barber, who just takes delight, sadistic delight, but also perverted delight in cutting these boys' hair. And he sells this movie. I think if there's a reason you should watch this movie, it's actually not because it's a decent sequel to the Chucky universe, it's to see how he acts, because he makes every scene he's in just really work. Because honestly, the rest of the film is, I'm not sure if it's the weakest movie so far. So of the first 5 Chucky movies, it might be. It's not bad, but I like the setting. I like the idea. I like what they did with it. But the kills are not too entertaining. Chucky is not too entertaining in that academy. It's more of a teenage drama, high school drama story with murder, and that also works. It's not bad. It's just not really the best one in the series. They do have some interesting ideas. At the end of the movie, they have this mock battle between two groups, the Blues and the Reds, and Chucky replaces their one team's dummy ammo with real ammo, and there's of course some payoff on that. There are some decent scenes in it, but it does. Yeah, I don't know. It's okay. It's fine. It's serviceable, and I think I don't want to say anything more about this. Also, now we will say goodbye to Andy and enter what is straight up horror comedy territory, because the fourth film, The Bride of Chucky, which came out 7 years after the third one in 1998, is just a complete tonal shift. Well, not complete, mostly. So the last two ones did play a bit with the horror comedy aspects of it, but now it really just dives into it. And I think you can already tell from the beginning, because it takes place, it opens up with this police officer, this guard, going into this big storage for evidence for unsolved crime, and you can see the Jason Voorhees mask in the background. You can see all these different horror props from other horror movie franchises. I don't know if that means that it all takes place in the same universe. That would be quite interesting to see Jason versus Chucky. I would like to see that movie. That would actually be a lot of fun, I think. Sadly, I don't think we'll see that anytime soon. But anyway, it opens up with this, and turns out the man has been set up by Chucky's ex-girlfriend, who in all these years have hoped for him returning and have worked on a way for him to return. Meaning she has been practicing the same voodoo, the same kind of black magic. And, well, now that she has the doll, she thinks they can finally have him back. But in all these years where she was alone, it's also revealed that she had set her eyes on this loser, this very American Gothic. That's the wrong word, sorry. It's just goths in America tend to look different than goths in Europe. So this very Gothic guy who is just completely pathetic. She wants a killer, and she doesn't want to sleep with him unless he murders someone. So he photographs it for evidence. So he tries to fake murders on other people by bloodying himself and taking pictures as if he's killed himself, but trying to hide. I don't know. It's difficult to really convey here through words, but all this setup is quite funny already. And yada yada yada. Chucky comes back to life after this ritual has taken place. It just takes a bit longer than expected, and they kill this new boyfriend, and it just takes on from there. At first, she had dreams of marrying Charles Lee Ray, so before he became Chucky, and then when Chucky hears this, he just laughs at her and mocks her And she realizes he's been wasting all these years for him to return, so she locks him up. Eventually, he escapes, then performs the ritual, kills her, and performs the ritual, transferring her body to a doll. So now we have two dolls. Really, this is only like the first 15 minutes of the movie, maybe even less. Now they're rekindling their love. They have a lot of funny moments, a lot of funny lines of dialogue. But these two guys are now alive. They are trying to figure out what to do next. And what they come up with is that they will go to the grave of Charles Lee Ray, try and perform the voodoo there. I'm not sure why they go back to the grave, because in the end, they actually not really. They go back to the Charles Lee Ray as far as I understood it. But when they are there, they need two fresh bodies that they will trade bodies with, so to speak, or who they will possess. So why they go to the grave? I know, again, all this magic is not that well explained. It's probably just one or two lines of dialogue and you just have to buy it. And the movie is good enough to buy it. So yeah, they convince these two teenagers in love, or young adults in love, to escape the controlling father, and who is the local, the boss of the community, and he's using the police to terrorize this couple. So they're using them, paying them money to ship these two dolls to the other side of the country. Because, yeah, they're dolls, they cannot really drive themselves, they're not really big enough for that. So they had to. It's actually been a thing since the second movie that they always rely on other people to do their thing, because that's they can't really transport themselves. Anyway, I'm trying, because this is one of the more interesting movies. I'm trying not to talk too much about this. So, yeah, they're going on this road trip of murder. And of course, people start dying around this couple who just want to live their life alone. So they start blaming each other, thinking each other are responsible for the murders. And yeah, of course, in the end, they realize the truth. I won't complicate matters too much, though I should say how it ends, because it leads directly into the next movie. There is a funny line here. So at the end of this movie, the dolls realize that they actually want to stay dolls and not transfer into human bodies, because one thing that we know is that they're more durable. It's almost impossible to kill them. But also, they can get away with murder, so they don't really have the same responsibility. So they can have all the fun they want, because throughout this movie, the bride also gets more accustomed to the idea of killing people. She does kill people herself. She doesn't enjoy it as much as Chucky. She doesn't indulge in it in the same way, but she does have fun killing some people, and doesn't really seem to have second thoughts that much. So yeah, they can live their happy doll life, Ken and Barbie, whatever, for all eternity. And as with any Bonnie and Clyde couple like this, children would probably get in the way. So they have sex in one scene, and the girl asks, "Hey, wait. Do you have a rubber?" And Chucky, of course, goes, "Oh shit, I wish I could remember the exact line." But she goes like, "I am all rubber, like, why do I need protection?" That was wrong. Because the movie ends with the bride giving birth. She gives birth to this little creature that kills straight away. So already we know we are dealing with a murder. Or are we? Because 6 years later, 2004, we are getting Seed of Chucky. And I should say Seed of Chucky, Curse of Chucky, and Cult of Chucky are the only three movies that's directed by Don Mancini, the guy who wrote all the movies. And whereas Seed of Chucky is a lot of fun, Curse of Chucky and Cult of Chucky, the two other movies he made, are terrible. So let's start with the fun. I could talk a lot about these movies because they're insane. What's true for the movies that Don Mancini made, the kills get better, they get more gratuitous. Unfortunately, a bit too much CGI in some of them, especially in Cult of Chucky. But the CGI in general the murders are nice. So if you want the good kills, these movies are still fine for that. But this one has the child of Chucky and the bride of Chucky, I forgot her name. The movie focuses around this doll. He doesn't know where he comes from. He's now used by this evil British ventriloquist puppet show guy who just uses him for his own amusement and to earn money. And this is just this naive little doll who grew up without parents. All he knows is that the parents came from Japan because he has Made in Japan stamped on him. And then he sees the premiere for a new Chucky movie coming out, a movie based around these supposed murders that the couple carried out. So it has become turned into an urban legend. So now they are having a movie set with the two dolls. At this point, they're just dolls. But again, magic, this son has this fragment of an amulet that tells him an incantation. He's being shipped to this movie set. He uses the incantation to bring his parents back alive. Not much to explain here. But what I should say is that the movie really blurs the line between a fictional universe and the real world, as Jennifer Tilly is playing herself in the movie. And she gets wrapped up in this. Chucky's girlfriend gets very fascinated with her and wants to possess her. And they start getting this idea that if they impregnate her, they can get a child and then they can get another host body and they can all turn into humans together and become a family. The bride of Chucky at this point wants to be a good mother, so she teaches her son not to kill. And she, of course, also tries not to kill herself. But the thing is, Jennifer Tilly is abused by people in Hollywood, and so she goes after them. Yeah, it's a difficult movie to explain, so it's just something that should be watched because this is a really good one. I should probably mention that John Waters is in it as this paparazzi, so it's nice to see John Waters in the movie. As long as it's not a John Waters movie. I'm not a fan of those. I'm sorry, I'm not, but he's a cool character. I like to see him show up in things. I kind of have to spoil the ending of this movie because my biggest gripe with the two movies after this is pretty much that they destroy the ending of this movie. So I'm trying, I'll be vague, but let's just say that both The Bride of Chucky and The Seed of Chucky survived the first movie, and Chucky is also still alive in some capacity. But that's it. That's what I will say. So that's how this ends. And I should also mention maybe the relation between the bride and Chucky is not great. They're not really on speaking terms. Okay, I hate having to do this. Curse of Chucky, 2013. So almost 10 years later, we didn't need this movie. This takes place in who cares, in a fuck all mansion with people you have never heard about and really shouldn't care about. And the acting is terrible. I think the lead is not absolutely terrible, but the rest are. Again, the only thing I can say for this movie is that the few kills that are in it are good. That's it. That's the only positive I can say. No, I can say another thing. This time, the Chucky doll, and it's not really explained how it ties into the other movies, how the actors come across, the characters come across the doll. But it's being shipped to this house by someone, I'm not to spoil who, but the person having sent the doll put a camera inside of it. So that's used in one scene, and that's okay. It's used once. It's really, this is one thing that could have made it more interesting, I guess, if it was introduced early in the movie, but no. It's a nice idea, implemented terribly. And yeah, it has just as bad performances, a plot that makes no sense and is just not really great. It really changes the character of Charles Lee Ray in this movie, in that who he presented himself as in The Bride of Chucky and in the three first movies is quite ruined by this movie. And the ending of this movie ruins the ending of The Seed of Chucky. Why? How can, if all the movies are written by the same guy, and how can they get the story this wrong? So he might think I'm wrong for saying this. I don't know, maybe he's right. But I think what he did with this is terrible and ruins what has been set up. And this is where suspension of disbelief, where all the things you could say about the other movies that kind of don't work, if you think about them too much, you didn't think about them because, the movies are good enough to hold up, to make you not think. This one is so terrible that it makes you think. And the movie after this, The Cult of Chucky from 2017, is outright terrible. The plot this time I will spoil it because it's so stupid. In all of these movies, the whole idea is that Chucky was this possessed doll by Charles Lee Ray, meaning one soul is transferred to a doll. That's it. In this movie, Charles Lee Ray is somehow able to possess multiple dolls and multiple people, giving all of them the idea that they are the same person, but also that they are new identities. Makes no sense. It's difficult to explain this because the movie tells you that these dolls, when they're brought to life, they have no concept of life before. Whereas when I've seen all the other movies, the dolls are direct continuation of the personality of the one who possesses them. So in this one, they're just making dolls come alive, and the dolls are just murderers for some reason. I don't know. It's not good. It's just not good. It's mind-boggling. It ruins the universe. It's just, I think if you do not care about continuity, do not care about that these movies have to make sense in a way and have to play together in a larger, a larger universe, a larger world building, then you might be able to enjoy it. Might, because most of the kills in this movie are okay, but everything else is terrible. It takes place in this insane asylum where you follow the main character from the movie before this, from Curse of Chucky. Chucky is killing people in an insane asylum. And it's not really that interesting, even when you have multiple Chuckies, because I thought, okay, there's one scene where now you have 3 different good guy dolls turned into killers. But yeah, it's used in one scene. It's used in one scene, that's it. It's really, for how stupid this movie makes, as far as how stupid this movie is and for how much it messes with everything, it really doesn't do anything with what I set up. It has more potential, much more potential, and then it doesn't really deliver on anything. And I would say one thing also, that the performances are better than in Curse of Chucky, but that's not saying much. Oh yes, one thing I should mention is Andy is back. And I had flashbacks to watching Halloween, the new trilogy from, I think, is it 2018? Where it just shows you Laurie Strode's having full PTSD after what she experienced and being a gun nut, because you have a scene where Andy comes home. You see that he has all these weapons in his home for self-defense. And it's funny, I mean, the first 5 minutes of this movie is actually are good. But already here it messes with the universe, because he has the head of Chucky locked up in his locker, in a safe, and he keeps torturing it. You don't know how he killed Chucky. It's revealed to probably not be that many years back. But yeah, it's not really revealed how he encountered Chucky, how he finally killed him. But obviously he didn't kill him. He decapitated him, blew half of his head off, and has tortured him ever since. But looking at the other movies, yes, there's a sense of the doll always kept alive, but it's also shown that the longer the doll has a body, the more human the doll becomes. So I'm not sure how it works anymore. It's so confusing, this universe. So I don't know. I just had to get off my chest. Well, I know it's a nice idea, but also already that's a problem, because that means that the first doll you see in the movie is actually not the original Chucky, and already then everything is just thrown on the ground, stomped on, shat on. But let me end on a positive note. Because we have the remake from 2019. The remake is not terrible. It's actually quite good. A bit above average. It's if you mainly watch good movies, I would say this is average. If you watch as much shit as I do, this is above average. I expected nothing and got something. And what is especially nice about this one is that it actually kind of explains why people want this doll, because it's set in the modern day. So the doll is artificial intelligence that's actually capable of playing with a kid and is capable of interacting with all these different systems. So, everything is connected to everything these days via Wi-Fi and different scans. So it can learn how to play on a computer, for instance, or it can learn how to turn on the certain TV channels or play different music. So suddenly this doll actually seems quite cool. I don't know why it still has to come in this boring husk, but maybe to make it more appealing to both boys and girls. I think, I know that in the modern era, it's quite common to try and have unisex toys. But at the same time, any toy company would probably just make different versions of the doll for different markets, different consumers, right? But that's just a really little thing. I think overall, what they did with this movie is quite good. They introduced a lot of technology to it that made it seem fresh. It had some good kills. It used different locations. Instead of the first one, where it all takes place in this apartment, more or less, This one introduces bullies and different social problems, and it's just a more deep movie. And I think I enjoyed the other Chucky movies for not being deep but just being fun. But that doesn't mean that the remake is bad. I think the remake took the source material and did something quite all right with it. I can recommend it. Yeah, sure. I think it might quite possibly be better than the first one, the first Child's Play film. I don't know if I'm heretical for saying that. It's probably not better than the second one, but it might be better than the first one. It's difficult to really measure this because they're so different movies. The first one, as I said, is more of a horror movie, a proper horror movie, whereas this one is somewhere between the Chucky movies in that it has gimmicks, it is fun, it doesn't take itself very seriously, but it takes itself seriously enough and has enough real horror moments that it also feels like a horror movie. So it's somewhere in the middle. But I think I've said enough. I think I should wrap up here. So what can I say? I can say that fortunately the movies in this series are good, and some are even maybe perhaps great. This is a series you can probably put on with some friends and have a great time. You can probably put them on yourself and have a decent time, but not all of them. So what would I give my strongest recommendation to? I think Seed of Chucky might be the best movie in the series. Just it's insane, and it probably has the fewest kills of all of the movies from what I can remember. But it has the funniest dynamics. The introduction of the child is amazing. After that, it either has to be Child's Play 2 or The Bride of Chucky. Both of those movies are also highly recommendable. No, not highly. They're recommendable. They're quite recommendable. Child's Play 3 and Child's Play. I don't know. I would say rather watch Child's Play, the first one, than Child's Play 3. But Child's Play 3 is watchable if you like all the other movies. The remake is also very watchable. Maybe even watch that instead of watching the original Child's Play. I mean, like, again, the Child's Play is not a bad film, but the new Child's Play might just make it more interesting. If you already intend on seeing Child's Play 2 and The Bride of Chucky, it will give you more of a mix. So I guess what I'm trying to say is if you want to pick 3 movies for one movie night, watch Child's Play 2, watch, oh, this is a difficult one, Seed of Chucky, and then Child's Play, a remake. 4 movies you should watch: Bride of Chucky and Seed of Chucky, because those 2 movies are so interconnected. Anyway, I don't know. I should end this. Just don't watch Curse of Chucky and Cult of Chucky. Those movies have really got awful, and I had so high expectations for this, having watched 5 good movies in a row and then watching 2 terrible ones. Well, even compared to Puppet Master series, those 2 movies are actually quite good. The Puppet Master series is such a mess. Such a mess. So at least not that terrible. But the bar is low with what I watch. The bar is really low. Um, so yeah, I'll keep making at least a few more movies on this topic. Depends on how much time I have to watch movies. To watch movies franchises. If you're interested in what I think about these movies, to watch the more like in-depth reviews, at least for some of them, you can check out my letterbox. There will be a link in the description, and it's called the Robot Quits. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. Take care.